Welcome to the Night Shift Podcast. Jeff Sharon here with Eric Lopez. We got a lot to talk about here on this leap day, Eric. UCF has made the leap to the Big 12, and we're experiencing our first leap day as members of the Big 12. I don't know what this is. You're the one.
A lot of leap references coming up on this program. I'm gonna laugh because Jeff's favorite playoff system, the college football playoff, apparently wants to give out automatic bids like cotton candy. Can't wait to hear. 14, baby.
Don't
14.
Get me started.
And by the way,
it's the more than one auto bid per conference that ticks me off.
Save it. We'll get into it. We'll get into that. Obviously, softball, big matchup against South Carolina, top 25. Baseball is at home against South Florida. Men's hoops, baby, coming off a win against Oklahoma State and Stillwater, gets ready to host Iowa State. And Jeffrey, we had somebody actually covering the game on site, in person, in Stillwater.
Yes, so let's dive in. We've got joining us here right off the top, Jake Ferraro. Now, Jake, you may have noticed, has done a couple of recaps for us on UCF men's basketball and women's basketball on the road. He's actually currently a student at Oklahoma State and has been phenomenally gracious in running around Big 12 country, covering the Knights for us when they've been on the road. And he was in Stillwater on Wednesday night for UCF's 77-71 victory over the Oklahoma State Cowboys. Jake, sorry about your alma mater there, but we appreciate the work that you've done, man. Welcome to the show. Good to see you.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Eric. Thank you for having me on. I'm all right after last night. What you said, I mean, look, it's my alma mater, but at the end of the day, I mean, everyone knows at OSU, I think worldwide, that the program, unfortunately, is in the position that it's in, from rowdy GIA sellouts to having, I think it was a little over 5,000 people at the game. I'm going to tell you this straight up. There was not 5,000 people at that game, even if you count the media and the players.
I'll say, as someone who's followed the Big 12 in the past and knows how crazy Gallagher-Iba Arena can be, it was shocking to me, like how there was no one in that building. And I tell you the truth, I think it had a very real effect on what UCF was able to do during the game, because UCF was down by 12.
They were
12 in this game, and fought back. We know how good UCF is defensively, but still, this league is about protecting home court, and UCF only has one road win all year. Of course, it was in Austin, much to the delight of everybody else in the Big 12. But they did something that they haven't really been able to do, which is come back and put a team away on the road.
Yeah, definitely. They started off slow. John Michael Wright and Eric Daly Jr., they got off to a hot start. I think John Michael Wright hit 4 threes in the first half and had 15, and Daly Jr. had 13. They combined for 28 of the OSU's 42 points in the first half. And when Wright and Daly were leading them in scoring, I said, this could get very, very ugly. And then in the press, they asked this to Coach Dawkins a lot about the press, but really that press really, really worked, because in the second half, John Michael Wright only had 7 points, led OSU with 22 points, but I think he only had 1 3-pointer, and Eric Daly Jr. only scored 2 points. And because of the fouls, he fouled out, which, by the way, if you watch that entire game, dude, the groaning and the complaining for both of the officials on both calling fouls on UCF and OSU was absolutely ridiculous. Even being in the media seating, the media people were going, this is absolutely ridiculous. What was it, 52, 51 fouls?
Let's
see. It was in the 50s, I thought. Yeah.
Oh, it was in the 50s.
54 combined fouls. 3 guys for Oklahoma State fouled out. 1 guy finished with 4. For UCF, Ibrahim Diallo fouled out. And Tierno Sila and Omar Payne both had 4.
Yeah, so, I mean, what it is what OSU's leading scorer, Javon Small, I think he averages 14 and a half or something like that. In the first half, he got his 3rd foul. And I think at that point, UCF was down 12 or down 8. And because he was not on the floor, they were able to cut the lead down. One thing you really have to notice about the Big 12, or really have to take notes of, is, you could be down 12, but one player goes out of the game, you get a little quick 5-0 run, and the whole momentum of the game can change. And that was really where I felt the momentum changed when OSU's leading scorer goes out of the game, and because of the foul trouble, OSU they kept getting fouls called, and I think it was Darius Johnson after the game. He said because they were in foul trouble, he kept going to the rim, drawing contact. UCF shot 36 free throws and hit 27, something like that. Yeah, they were like 75%. Right.
Yeah, they're 27 to 36, and DJ was 8 of 9 at the line. He's an 85% foul shooter as it is. Shamari Allen was 8 of 10 at the line. So that tells you, exactly what their plan was at that point. It was those two guys in the backcourt just going to take it to the hole and draw contact. So combined, that's 16 of 19 at the line between those two guys. Yeah,
and Sellers had, I think, 10 points in the second half too. Sellers and Johnson, they took over in the second half when they needed that push. They got things going. I think it was either DJ or Sellers, but one of them hit the three to start the second half, and then UCF got their first lead in the second half, and OSU had the quick tie. But then once OSU lost that tie, UCF led the rest of the way.
Yeah,
and the Knights dominated. Knights took over from that game.
Let me throw out a name, Marcellus Avery, who got a big offensive rebound. There was a point late in that game where UCF missed a couple free throws.
Yes.
And Avery got couple times. He got offensive rebounds and get extra possessions. He hit a couple threes there, too, to contribute and help them from a straight, you talked about all the fouls. That actually, I think, favored UCF because they have more bodies. That's the thing Johnny Dawkins has preached all year about strength and numbers. And going to depth in there, and it paid off. I think you're right, Oklahoma State, they were hurt more by the foul trouble than UCF was.
No, they were. And Boynton, he discussed that in his press conference. When you're in foul trouble and then you lose Small, your leading scorer, it takes the ball out of his hands. And then when you're playing with 3-4 fouls, you got to be cautious because one foul, he's on his fourth, and you really got to watch yourself, or one more foul and he's gone from the rest of the game.
Yeah.
What helped them too is you make that point. They dominated the glass yesterday. They had 40 rebounds to OSU's 27, and then the offensive rebounds, they had 14. They had Avery, Payne, Sellers, and Johnson. Each of them had 2 offensive rebounds, and that gives more possessions.
Yeah.
And that's been a strength of UCF all year. They've always been around that third. When they've been successful, they get in that 12 to 14 offensive rebounds. Gives them extra possessions, gives them some easy baskets, and that's why UCF right now, this team is on pace, believe it or not, Jeffrey. This might be the highest scoring Johnny Dawkins team in the Dawkins era. They're about
really?
1.1 behind one of the other teams in the maybe 2019, I want to say.
I was going to say 2019,
It's not because this is such a great talented offense. It's because they're getting extra possessions, offensive rebounds, as Jake referred to there. The Oklahoma State was a great example of that, because they held Oak State to one and done, held them under 40% shooting, and UCF, because they got the extra possession, shot around 45, 46, were able to get those points up to 77, and so it was a solid come from behind win. And let's not underestimate that. Down 12 on the road, they was similar to the Texas game. They were down 16 in Texas, came back. This team is scrappy, Jake. You've seen it now. You've seen them now play a couple times.
I have, yes.
In Lubbock.
Yes, was in that game in Lubbock. And going back to that, they were in that game the entire time, even when I think Tech led as much as 10 or 12, if I remember. But still, they never were out of that game. There was a 1-point game with 2.5 to go. And, they just couldn't hit some shots. And then, they started 1 of 13 or 14 from 3 in the first half, which impacted the game. But UCF is a team that is much better than what their record says. And I truly believe that in an unbiased way. My opinions will always be unbiased for the people who could be listening, who like to say stuff. But regardless, they are better. I know. Regardless, they're a better team than what they show. And last night at Oklahoma State was a great chance. And it was the first time this season they won 2 consecutive games against a Big 12 school. Yeah. They beat Texas Tech on Saturday, and they beat OSU Wednesday. And then, look, riding some momentum. Iowa State's win wasn't that great like a lot of people thought it could. They only beat Oklahoma by 13 at home. They only scored 58 points. If UCF can take care of that glass, get some second chance points.
Got to protect the basketball because Iowa State does a good job turning the ball over. But you're right, Iowa State is a different team away from Hilton as you know, Jake, everybody in the Big 12 knows Hilton's probably one of the best, along with Fog Allen, the best home court in the Big 12.
They're 3 and 4 in conference away from
on the way. So I agree with you. I think if you got Iowa State and Houston back to back, which could Big 12.
And then you got to go on the road to TCU. That's like the worst final stretch of the Big 12 of all the teams remaining.
but that takes me to my next point, though, that I wanted to get both of your guys' takes on. So because let's zoom out for just a second. UCF right now 15-12 overall, 6-9. They're in that bottom 4, which means that they, if the Big 12 tournament started now, they would play on the first day. But the key is when we're talking about these last 3 games and then heading into the Big 12 tournament and then thinking about what the postseason prospects would be, let's say NIT, and UCF is showing up in some NIT predictions right now. You want to be one of the top 2 teams in the net ranking outside of the Big 12 teams that made the field of 68. Now, like we said, next 2 games, tough against the top 2 teams in the conference, but it's at home, right? Iowa State, Houston. Right now, UCF, I'm looking at the net rankings. Right now, they're at 66 in the net. Ken Palm has got them at 6, also at 66. So, Eric, I want to start with you on this. What do they got to do in these next 2 games? Because these are 2 tough games. I mean, they're both at home, yes, but we're talking about the 2 best teams in the conference. Are either of these games gettable? And if so, what can that do?
Well, yeah, I think Iowa State, as Jake and I were talking about, Iowa State tends to throw, maybe an egg or 2 on the road. Houston's tough, man. I just think that's a tough matchup. Houston's so physical.
There's familiarity there. We know how to
play. There is.
We played them. And actually, I mean, we can laugh all we want about the game that we played up in Houston. I actually thought that defensively we played them pretty well in that game.
Oh, no, that's not the issue. It's not defensively. We can defend them. It's just we can't score on them. They're the best defense.
And again, nobody can.
Right, that's the problem.
Yeah.
But I'm curious if Jake can chime in on this. I actually think Iowa State has not played UCF. There's no familiarity.
I think I'd
rather have that from a UCF standpoint. Play a team that is not familiar with what we do versus a team like Houston, who is familiar from the days in the American. And since, like, you look at Cincinnati, they beat UCF twice because they're familiar with UCF, so they know what the tendencies are. Whereas look at Kansas, UCF played them the first time. Kansas was caught off guard. Oklahoma, Texas, all these teams that UCF have beaten, for the most part, have not played them this year. Now, Oklahoma State's unique because they did play in the Bahamas last year, which UCF won. But Texas Tech was the second game, so I'll give you that. But if I had to pick, I think Iowa State, UCF has a better chance than Houston. Because, again, Iowa State, you know this, Jake, from covering the league, Iowa State tends to not be as good on the road, which is no shame. I mean, a lot of teams in college hoops can say that. But Iowa State that's the big question with them. How good are they away from Hill?
Well, they're 4-4 on the road, actually. And in my opinion, this is the right time to get Iowa State. Look, they had the win. They beat Oklahoma 58-45. They beat West Virginia, who's the worst team in the Big 12, at home only by 7 points. They lost to number 2 Houston in Houston. This is the right time to get them. When you got 2 games in a row, this is the right time to gain confidence. And you're getting them at home. It's the space game. It's going to be a Saturday. UCF will be loud in there. The students will be ready. You get that 3rd win in a row. But if you're going to get into the tournament, in my opinion, you have to win at least 2 of these 3. The best one to win is Saturday against Iowa State. And then, maybe if you hang with Houston closer than what people think, maybe that gives some nudging, like, okay, they're not too bad like everybody could say. And then, look, TCU, I think TCU is a beatable team too. And you would have to get a win. I definitely would say you might have to get 2 or 3 wins in Kansas City to have a chance to go, okay, we beat 2-3 teams in the tournament. Is that enough? But it starts with Saturday. Saturday is the game you must have.
And you're talking about the NCAA picture, for the record. You're talking about the
NCAA picture. Yes. I mean, they're 15-12.
Yeah.
They definitely. I mean, look, even if UCF is 15-12, they're 6-9. If they get that one I mean, you're 8-10 or 7-7 or 9-9. I mean, that's a good way to go and go, okay, this is we have a more respectable resume compared to the other schools. And also, when you take into the consideration the losses that don't look too bad, hey, we played against this school pretty well.
Yeah.
And some of these schools got blown out.
Listen, if they were to somehow win out, like you're saying, go 9-9, not only would they be in the picture for the tournament, we'd be building Dawkins a statue. We'd be giving him a lifetime contract. It would be insane. That would be
myself. It
would be the greatest accomplishment that any UCF coach has ever done in any sport in the history of the athletic department. Period. 9-9 in this league. It's insane.
First year too, when a lot of people had them 14-13 in the Big 12.
Oh, easily. They were dead last. They were unanimous, mostly picked. Now, Iowa State, interesting, Jeff. I don't know what you're allowed to comment or not, but obviously, I've heard it's going to be close to a sellout. They're honoring the 94 team, and I believe Kirk Sparrow, the former UCF basketball head coach, will be honored.
30th anniversary of UCF's first NCAA tournament team.
Now, I don't know. Is that pregame, halftime?
I think it'll be halftime. I don't know. I haven't found out.
But I've heard there's a lot of people coming up, like old-time fans, some Kirk jerks from the past are coming up to watch this game for Kirk. So to Jake's point, this is going to be, I think, an electric atmosphere on Saturday, and I think the pressure's on Iowa State to hold serve to try to keep up with Houston for the Big 12 title. So I agree with Jake. I think Iowa State's your best chance to win. Houston's just tough. They know what UCF's coming. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I think if you can split these two home games, let's go with that. If you can somehow split, and then let's say you even lose to TCU, but then you win that opening round of the Big 12 tournament game, I think that's more than enough to get you at least to the NIT. Now, some of this also depends, what does Kansas State do? How many teams do the Big 12 get in? Because again, for those that are not familiar with the rules, it's the two best net ranking teams that don't make the NCAA tournament from a Power 6 league that automatically get in. So how many is the Big 12 going to get in? Are they going to get 9? Are they getting 10? Are they getting 8? That will impact UCF, what their future is.
It will. And you have to take into consideration the head-to-head matchups because UCF has that head-to-head with Texas. Texas has really been underperforming. They got the head-to-head with Oklahoma. They got it with Oklahoma State. K-State. I saw K-State in Manhattan in November, but I will say that K-State team from last year is not what it was this year. They lost a lot of good guys to the draft.
It was against us in that opener, though. I'll tell you that.
You know what? But Jake's right. They're not. Kansas State's not the same team that blitzed.
They are not.
In the opener by 20. They nearly lost to West Virginia, blowing a 25-point lead on Monday.
No, they did. And Eric, going back to what you said about Iowa State, if you want to look at their schedule, this is how they match up with the ranked teams. Let's just say, for example, they lost to number 12 Texas A&M in a neutral site game. They lost to number 11 Oklahoma at OU. They only beat number 2 Houston by 4. They lost at BYU when they were ranked number 20 by 15. They only beat TCU when they were ranked number 19 by 1. They lost at Baylor by 2. And they lost at Houston by 8. So this is the right time to get the Cyclone team.
No doubt. If this game was at Hilton, I would give UCF no chance because Hilton's a tough place to play. You ask any Big 12 person that follows it, it's an incredible atmosphere. Many people have said it's a bucket list place alongside Fog Allen at Kansas.
That's my number one to go to.
Is your number one? I know you're not alone in that. A lot of people say go to Iowa State for hoops.
We'll all meet up there next year.
But they are going to play them on the road, so I think it's a chance. But look, let's not lose the fact, because I don't know why. We tend to move the goalposts with basketball, which I don't understand. I mean, I think this season's been remarkable what they've accomplished in the Big 12, the best league in the sport. To me, a league that, quite frankly, we haven't seen a conference this dominant since maybe the Big East in the ACC in the 80s. That's how strong this league has been. And UCF has held their own because I think a lot of people are like, oh, UCF's going to bring down the Big 12 in basketball. That has not been the case. And I think that's been a big part of the success of this team to already have 6 wins and who knows how many more. It's been remarkable. And I'll tell you this, Jake, Wednesday night was interesting. I think a lot of pessimists thought if you would have said, hey, UCF's playing Oklahoma State, the arena's half empty, nobody cares. people would have thought, the game's at UCF in August, right? Like the casual fan would have said in August, that's UCF. They don't care. It's the opposite. UCF has been invested from a fan standpoint. It's Oklahoma State, Jake, that has lost engagement and has their coach under fire with Boyden, who might get fired. Who knows?
If you care to hear the attendance, they said it was 5,044 out of 13,611, I think it is. I said this earlier before we started recording. There was not 5,000 people at that game. There was no way. I don't care what anybody says.
I watched that because I've watched Oak State games there at Gallagher for many years. I couldn't believe how empty that was. I'm like, holy mackerel.
Yeah, it was shocking.
That is a loud statement there. I would not that was bad. But UCF's not in that position. UCF's got their stock up. Oak State is not, and that's a credit to them.
And here's what I'll say. What you're talking about with UCF joining the Big 12, they're excited to go to a Power 5 school. I looked at the BYU game for football. I mean, I know as far as playing here, remember, this is just playing here in Stillwater. There was not many Cincinnati fans, and there were not the best amount of BYU fans. But UCF, I sense they're excited. They want to compete with the other Power 5 schools, with Florida, with Miami, with Florida State. They want to compete against those schools.
Yeah,
no doubt.
Yeah, that's been the MO. And I think that a lot of people, and this is the thing I want to wrap up with you here, Jake, before we let you go. You've been around the Big 12 for a while. You've seen it from the other end. I mean, we see everything through black and gold glasses. Let's be real. But what has been your impression, and really the impression of the rank and file folks around the Big 12, Oklahoma State in particular, and the folks that you talk to about UCF's addition to the conference, not just from a basketball perspective, but overall? It's because we are the youngest school in the to get to this point, not just from the age of the school, but from the age of the athletic program. And we've seen, listen, we have a chip on our shoulder, right? We see people who look at us and be like, what are you guys doing here? You're just that school from Orlando. But we feel like we belong. Is that sense starting to get to the other schools around the Big 12 that, hey, they really are a good addition?
Well, I'll never forget when it was early September 2021, or it was mid-September when we got the news, okay, UCF is going to go. And a lot of people were like, oh, they're crazy. They had the AAC success, just let them stay there. And I said, I think this is going to be good, because the first point, as we talked about before the show, is they get the real challenge now to try and convince 3, 4, 5-star recruits from not going to the Miami schools, because those kids years ago can go, well, you're not a Power 5 school, and I'm going to go to Miami or Florida State, whatever it might be. And now the fact that they joined, and I remember saying this, I said, look, this opens up competition for not only the teams, in Oklahoma, Texas, but now with joining, they got to try and make trips to Florida now. And that's not easy for the parts of the country that they're in. It's very difficult for people in Iowa to make a trip down to Florida. Or now with the new Big 12 expanding all the way up to Utah and Arizona, those people from Utah got to try and convince to go down to Florida and recruit. But with the space game, I think the space game throws a definite big cool thing, like, hey, go to the bounce house, see a game. And I think people are starting to care more. Look, the first year, as you said in basketball, they were picked just about unanimously to finish last in every single prediction you had, and they are exceeding expectations. The one thing that I thought was really good when Bill Self, the KU coach, said that Dawkins brings class. And for a first ballot college basketball Hall of Fame coach to say that, you got something going on. Football, I think it's still challenging just because of going into a new conference. You don't know how good it is. But you know what? With Oklahoma and Texas leaving to go to the SEC, they can do something. I'm not saying they're going to be Big 12 appearance next season, but could they catch some eyes? Yeah, they can. Could they have a double-digit win season and help with recruiting? Absolutely, they can. And I see this program, I'm not saying national championship anytime soon, but when you want to look at all the aspects, I did love the UCF edition personally. The UCF was probably my favorite edition other than Houston. Because Houston, obviously, Houston being here at Oklahoma State. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But I love the UCF edition. Hell, I want to go to Orlando for a space game or just to go to the bounce house.
Well, you're more than welcome to come.
Oh, maybe I will.
Hey, come on down. So Jake Ferraro, who's covered UCF basketball for us on the road for the Big 12, he will continue to do so with other sports as well. Jake, I know you got a lot of irons in the fire. Tell UCF fans how they can follow you and what are some of the things that you're doing so we can follow you.
Yes. So first of all, Ryan for Blind Girl Banneret, extremely grateful you allowed me, and Bryson Turner is in here. Shout out to Bryson for getting me in contact with Jeff and Eric. Yes, I will be at the TCU game in 9 days for Blind Girl Banneret, the final game of the Big 12 regular season. You can follow me on Instagram at JakeXF_. And my X account is 18JXXX18. I'm straight edge. That's why we got the X's there. And 18 because my favorite football player all the time is Peyton Manning. Yes, I'm a Peyton Manning fan, not a Tom Brady fan. I also write for the Dallas Stars at Wada Hockey. You can go to our website, wadahockey.com. Also do work for the Lockhaven Democrat. Not this Wednesday, the following Wednesday, I will cover Central Arkansas's softball game at Oklahoma State, and I will be in Monroe, Louisiana for their baseball game during my spring break. I think it's the Tuesday or Wednesday. I don't know off the top of my head. But yes, that is the information. Jeff, Eric, Bryson, thank you for allowing me to come on, and excited to do some more work over the semester and maybe in the future.
Eric, what I tell you about these Jersey boys here? Jake's from Rahway. I'm from Nutley. The dude knows how to hustle. I agree. Jake,
by the way, I'm throwing this out there. UCF and Oklahoma State softball 2 days after they used Central Arkansas Oak State softball game.
Just saying.
Yes, it's a weekend series. I can do 2 of those games because the Saturday I got to do a project for my OSU capstone course. I'm providing a video on a Dallas Stars game day experience at American Airlines Center. If you've never been to a Stars game at the AAC, you must go, especially if you are a metalhead, because their goal song is by Pantera. Rest in peace, Dimebag and Vinny.
Jake Ferraro. Jake, thank you so much for all your hard work.
Absolutely.
I really appreciate it. Stay in touch, and I guess we'll see you when you head down to Fort Worth for UCF and TCU. We'll see you there.
Yes, sir. You guys have a good night.
All right. Jake Ferraro joining us. We really appreciate it. So UCF men's basketball right now, Eric Lopez. Next 2 games coming up, obviously that Iowa State game Saturday.
You're gonna get to introduce Kirk Sparrow, Jeffrey. Huh?
I think I'm keeping my fingers crossed on that, because I mean, you know how it is, right? I mean, you never know, stuff happens sometimes.
Well, you're going to see him. At least you're going to see him. I will be. Yeah, I will probably, unfortunately, miss him. Yeah,
I'm optimistic about that. 4:00 on Saturday. We also got the block party, and it is the space game. I will have the Canaveral blue tie ready to go. I'm just saying, this is. I know how you feel about Canaveral blue. Listen, I'm jumping all in on it. Everyone knows I am. All right,
just bring a win. That's as long as you win. You notice baseball got rid of their blue, and they're doing just fine. So.
Well, they just haven't had one yet. Wednesday, also this Wednesday, we can't forget #1 Houston coming in for senior night. It's going to be wild. It's going to. I got it.
Need Houston to beat Oklahoma to lock up the fact that they would come in #1, which UCF has never played a #1 ranked team.
Which, by the way, either or. Eric, I don't want to pull out the Ben Crenshaw quote.
Oh boy,
I got a
Ben Crenshaw's a golfer for those who are former masters.
Anyone knows what I'm talking about. Look up the '95 Ryder Cup before the last day when the US was down big to Europe. I got a funny feeling about this. I'm just going to
the Houston game or just in general.
In general, I got a funny feeling about these next 2 games.
All right, I'll take a split. I
will too. I will gladly take a split too, and it's going to be loud on Saturday.
By the way, there is nobody out there. I don't care who you are. Nobody predicted them to win 6-7 games in the Big 12. None of you. So I don't even want to. That's unbelievable.
Yeah. All right. Let's bring in Bryson Turner, as Jake alluded to earlier. Bryson, what is it? You're joining us from a car.
Yeah, he's covering tennis. We got people all over the state, the area right now.
Everybody, yeah.
Bryson was covering tennis. Kyle is actually at Amway, or what it used to be Amway. It's now Kia Center. Excuse me. Covering Taylor Hendricks' return.
That's right. Derek Morton's there
Jazz.
too. He's taking photos of Taylor too. At the game,
they're playing the Orlando Magic. The Magic won. Hendricks, I think, started and played like about 20-some minutes. You could get the stats later. Hopefully, fingers crossed, Kyle can actually get to talk to Taylor Hendricks. That might be a big ask because, the NBA media relations. Good Lord. Anyway.
Final score of that game was
tell us how you really feel, Eric. Go ahead.
Don't even get me started on the league.
Final score of that game was Magic 115, Jazz 107.
That's you imagine you gotta win that. But yeah, let's just say this: Kyle's had to jump a lot of hurdles this year. That he's actually qualified for the Summer Olympics in the hurdles this year in Paris. That's how many hurdles he's had to jump to get to posting stuff. But anyway, moving on.
Let's dive in with Bryson real quick on women's basketball too, because it was we had senior night the other night and didn't go as hoped. 65-53 loss to Kansas. Kansas had this one girl who was 6'6", and she scored 29 points in that game. It was Tiana Jackson. Man, she was something. 29 and 10, 4 blocks, and she was 7 of 13 at the line and 11 of 15 from the field. And UCF, the women right now, I think we can say it's been a disappointing sort of conclusion to the conference season. They're at 12 and 15, 3 and 14 in the conference. They're at least 500 at home, 8 and 8 overall, Bryson. But they have one game left to go. It's at Houston on Saturday, 8 p.m. Bryson, regardless of what happens with this game against Houston, hopefully UCF can pull off an upset there. But what do you think as we've now finished the home phase of the season? What is the wrapping look like on UCF women's basketball this season, their first season in the Big 12? And what are the things that you feel that they need to? Well, I'll get to Eric on this too. But what are the things that they need to work on this offseason in terms of recruiting in order to get to where Coach Messer wants them to be?
I actually think from a recruiting standpoint, Satia Messer is actually doing a very, very good job. I would actually argue that she is doing just as good a job as Dawkins is, because the fact that she went and got Caitlin Peterson, and then from the high school, you got a Shola Cott, who did very well in the beginning of the season, didn't really see as much of her later, but you also have Kayal Nugodu, who has also been very great in the big role this year. So I think that as far as that goes, the recruiting is good. Maybe you want to get another guard to go with Layla and Caitlin Peterson because you have Maya Burns leaving. So you definitely want to have somebody to replace her. But overall, I actually think that as long as we don't see people leave from the transfer portal, if Satia Messer can retain the players that she has right now, I actually think it's more going to look at what's going on the court. Because to me, I think the talent is there. It's just that some of this stuff on the court hasn't worked out for them. Let's remember, by the way, that they have lost 3 games by 1 basket, 2 of them on the road against top 10 ranked opponents. So let's not pretend that this team was absolutely horrible because they weren't. And not only that, but remember how we said at the beginning of the year for both basketball teams, don't finish last. This last game against Houston, if UCF wins this game, they will tie Houston in the conference record. And because UCF beat Houston earlier in the year, UCF will win on tiebreak. So UCF still has a chance to not finish last in the conference and thus outperform expectations. So I'm actually a little more optimistic about women's basketball this year. There's still work to be done for sure, but I think I see the pieces. It just needs to be put together.
Eric, where do you see, what the direction is?
Well, I heard Kyle talk to Cynthia Messer. You can check out those interviews on their YouTube channel. Their first big revelation, by the way, Cynthia Messer acknowledged Kyle's tie. That's to me. We were waiting.
Hey, that deserves a breaking news.
I know. I'm bummed out. Kyle couldn't join us, but he had a very legitimate excuse. He's covering obviously Taylor Hendricks there with Magic against Magic. But here's where I disagree with Bryson. They need size, and a lot of it. They need size because these Big 12 teams, Texas, who played them over the weekend, and you just mentioned Kansas, they all have more size than UCF. That's number one. They have size with skill. UCF does not have that. also the other teams have depth. UCF does not have that, and that's why we've seen UCF the last 3 games. UCF had lost now by 10 or more points, double digits, because there was a stretch in the middle of the season where Bryson's alluding to, where they were right there in games. They were right there within a basket against Baylor and things like that. But it's kind of faded here at the end, and I think part of that is the depth. So we'll see what she brings in from a recruiting standpoint starting next year. I think next year is important from that standpoint to see progress. Bryson's right. The Houston game will decide last place based on that result. But that's even regardless, size and then size with skill they're going to need. They got to upgrade this roster, and they know that. I don't think it's a earth-shattering news for them. And I think we'll see what the recruiting looks like. We will not know until we see them on the court next season and in the fall, come November. We'll see how they look.
According to WBBblog.com, right now there are 4 players, at least right now, in UCF's pipeline in terms of recording. I'm going to try and bring this up here so you guys can see this. Arek Angui, forgive me if that's how her name's pronounced, or if it's not pronounced. 6'6" center from Decatur, Georgia, originally from South Sudan. Mahogany Chandler Roberts, 6'2" forward from Portland, Oregon. She signed in November. Angui signed in November as well. Let me see if I can add this in here. Yeah. Adeyong Ring, 6'5" forward center from Cave Creek, Arizona, originally from Sydney, Australia. She committed in November. And then there was another player committed in October, Summer Yancey, a 5'11" wing from Raytown, Missouri. So you talk about size. Well, I just saw 6'6", 6'5", and 6'2" pop up in the recruiting, at least according to this particular site.
Sure.
There you go.
That's but that tells you that she knows. I mean, she's coached in the Big 12. She understands what they need. And listen, year 3, year 4 is usually when you have an idea where the program is headed. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. I think that's the story on the court. I think there's an interesting story that we'll have to discuss once we get Kyle back. I think about the off the court and a business standpoint, because we've talked a lot about the men's program and the lack of resources and finances and what they need to compete in the Big 12, right? From a men's basketball. That applies to women's and then some too, by the way. That goes both ways. Oh, yeah. And I think that's another challenge as well on the women's side that we'll have to get into once we get Kyle back. Because I want to get Kyle, because Kyle and Bryson have covered the team all year. But I am curious, and Jeff, from a women's basketball standpoint, because there's a lot of things they got to address. For example, can they get that resource on the women's side? Mm-hmm. That's going to be interesting there, because the men's are struggling to get that for whatever reason. And I don't think this is an insult, but I think we all agree the men's obviously have more fans than the women's side does. So there's a lot of interesting questions from a program status standpoint for them, because the Big 12 women's hoops wise, it's a top 3 league, which is going to stay that way, even though they do lose Texas and Oklahoma, which, by the way, are the Big 12 champion. But they do get Arizona, who's a powerhouse in women's hoops next year, and I think Utah is good, and Colorado's at the NCAA tournament team. So my point is, just like the men, it ain't going to get easier for the women's side either.
I'm going to disagree with you actually a bit, Eric, at least in terms of like fans, because fans flock to teams that have momentum built up. And men's basketball, I will say, like at the beginning, things really got into a breakneck pace with them when they started winning against, like, that Kansas game. I think was like, because you knew Kansas was going to get a lot of people regardless. Like, even if UCF lost, Kansas was going to have a lot of people there. But the fact that, but then after that win, when it rains, it pours. With women's basketball, it just didn't happen. Remember, people did kind of show up, not as much for the men, grant you, but like at least the disparity that we're seeing, they showed up when women's basketball was really, really good in the Abe era.
So, no, they didn't. No, they didn't. No, they didn't. They didn't draw either. They didn't draw either.
They showed up more than they are now.
That's not saying a lot. That's the problem. That's one of the reasons why Abe right now, I'm watching as we're recording in Athens, Georgia, losing by 30 to LSU, the SEC. She's not having a great year either herself, in fairness. Tough year for all parties in that one, but they're kind of in a similar boat. But no, and Jeff and I, Jeff, you and I have talked about this for years. Remember the Gail Striegler era when they used to be pretty good and they didn't draw. This has been an issue that goes back decades with women's basketball. And it's interesting because we're in a time where women's basketball is actually peaking nationally. And we'll see if that happens here at any point, but we'll see.
I think the difference is, and I want to see what you both feel about this. We saw what happened with the men's team. The win against Kansas really locked everybody in, right?
No doubt, 100%.
We can beat Kansas, we can beat anybody. One win, let's say UCF women's basketball beats
Baylor.
What's your equivalent to, let's say, Baylor, okay? If they beat Baylor at home, that's not going to suddenly make 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 people show up to their next game. It's going to have to be a concerted, long-term effort of being consistently good. I think that's the real issue at hand for UCF women's basketball. Going back to Gail Striegler, that was about as consistent as UCF has been in the last 25, really since the turn of the century, right? Feels weird saying that.
You can make the argument that women's basketball has actually had more success than the men's from a win-loss standpoint over the case of 25, 30 years.
It hasn't been really consistent, though.
No, right. Because Striegler's thing was she was the opposite in that very streaky, had good regular seasons, but didn't win the automatic bid, right?
Well, the other thing is, I don't know if you can really count that too, because we were in the Atlantic Sun at that point.
Fair. No, fair point.
That's not even Conference USA,
No, right. Fair point. Agreed 100%. But I'll say this. Here's the other thing. You just brought up an interesting point, though. The men's got momentum by beating Kansas because Kansas registers with the the casual fan, right? Mm-hmm. You don't have to be a college basketball fan to know what the significance of Kansas is in college basketball. I don't think the Big 12 has that in women's basketball. In fact, it did. It's leaving. It's called Texas. I'm not sure they have that team.
It was Baylor, and then she left.
She left. Kim Mulkey left to go to LSU. UConn was that team in the American, Jeff. You did some of those PA games with UConn. Think of all the people that flocked because they wanted to see UConn, Gino, and the start, fill in the blank star player that you knew was going to, the next superstar that for UConn, right? Yeah. There's not that program from a national standpoint in the Big 12. So I don't know to me, I don't think there's that program that draws the casuals there from that standpoint.
So when you see it, I wanted to continue this point real quick because I want to get your take on this, Elo and Bryson. When Joy Williams was here, UCF won 2 Conference USA championships, but both years that they won it, only one time did they win 20 games. Right. And they were the only 2 times that UCF won double-digit conference games. All the others, they were below 500 in Conference USA. In Joy's last 3 years in the American, they were 9th, 8th, and 10th. Not good enough, right? Abe gets in. Yes, they won 20 games every season that wasn't COVID. But here's where your point, resonates with me, Eric, is how would that have been different had one of those wins at home been against UConn, right? Because they were consistently good with Abe. Last 4 years, right?
Best run in the history of the program. Best run ever. Absolutely.
Take out the COVID year. She never won less than 21 games. 26-6, 20-10, 16-5 the COVID year, and that was the one that I think they look back and like, man, if that didn't happen. And then 26-4 her last year and took UConn to the rails. Okay. But remember, that was after UConn had left the American. I just wonder if one of those wins against UConn in one of those years could have been the equivalent of the Kansas win for the men this year. And then maybe our tune's a little bit different. No?
I don't know. I don't think Abe's still here, though. That's the thing. I think she would have left. Anyway.
Yeah, but put that aside. I mean,
I think that factors in, though, into that. That does factor in.
I think he means from a singular season perspective, Eric. Would an Abe win against UConn cause people to really get behind them for the rest of the season, just like how the men have?
I'm skeptical on that. I believe it's just I'll give you an example because I talked to some people that were at the Texas women's basketball game and they were at the volleyball game. There were more people for UCF volleyball against Texas, which had a record crowd, than there was for the women's basketball game. And it's not like UCF volleyball had a great year, quote unquote. It was a rebuilding year. But my point is, It wasn't like, hey, they're 25-3. People will just, I think there's interest in volleyball. Hey, it's Texas, the defending national champions. There's a brand. UCF softball is going to host Oklahoma at the end of the year. They're the 3-time defending national champions. Tickets are going in the secondary market for $150, $200. I'm not sure we're ever getting to that point in women's basketball unless, to your point, Jeff, now you make a valid point. Can you sustain winning for a while? And more specifically, can you find your own Caitlin Clark? That's the other thing. Because if there's a player that you're like, hey, I'm not a women's basketball fan, but I got to go see blank. That's what's happened with Caitlin Clark, right? A lot of people that don't like women's basketball have said, hey, I don't like women's basketball, but I'm going to go watch Caitlin Clark when she's on TV. That's what's happened.
But the hard part about that is like Caitlin Clarks don't grow on trees. You know what I mean?
No, you're right. But the good news is from a UCF standpoint, you're in a conference now where you have a better chance of finding somebody like that than you did before, right? That's the positive, is that you're in the right league to potentially find somebody close to that can bring some eyeballs to your program. Because I think that's a big factor. Like I think McKenna Melville, would you not agree, Jeff, brought eyeballs to the volleyball program that nobody has before.
She did, but it was also the fact that they were winning so much too, and she was part of it. It's kind of a chicken or the egg thing, right?
Right, but a great player usually helps you win, right? Well, and that's a factor. But whereas as great as the A teams was, there was not an individual on that team that said, "Hey, I got to go see that player play." With all respect to Diamond Battles and Kaba, they were not that all of signature player. They're like, I need to go see that.
They didn't have a mega star.
Bingo.
Right.
And I do think in these sports, you do need that to bring casuals as well.
Yeah. I mean, and that's true. And I want to get to you, Bryson, in just a second. I just want to say that I think that part is true. But in the absence of that, what will help the attendance at women's basketball is, again, it's going to be a long climb, but it's going to have to be that consistent success. And not going like 22-11. I'm talking about like you're going to have to win 25, more than that, like 25 games a year, be in the top 25 consistently. And, and also that's in the absence of not having a Goliath to slay like UConn in the league with you. Right. So and if anyone, I do believe that if anyone knows exactly what that's going to take, it's Satia Messer, because I think that Satia looks at the program and says, well, with Baylor, with Kim Mulkey no longer at Baylor, right? And remember, Satia was an assistant with her there for a long time. And with Texas and Oklahoma no longer there, and we're bringing the four corner schools in, the window is open for us to be that program if the pieces fall into place properly. Bryson, go ahead with what you were going to say.
Yes, I was going to say that I actually think that to Eric's point about finding your own Caitlin Clark, I feel like if there is anyone that can find a player for UCF that could do that, it's Satia Messer. Let's not forget
Caitlin Peterson.
Exactly. By the way, Caitlin Peterson is averaging 19.8 points of scoring average this season. That is more than Tamika Coley, who is one of the better scorers in program history. Like, we have not seen a UCF person score that much since the early 90s. So and then of course we also have Kyle Nagodu and Ashola Kott in the front court. And you look at those people that she recruited, Jeff, the people that signed and stuff like that, and that type of thing. What do we see about that? Size. What does Ashola and Kyle already have? Size. Mm-hmm. Is really trying to build this front court up. And I remember saying this at the beginning of the year. This front court was very, very thin. Nay Hutton was already hurt the whole year. Jayla Kelly got hurt too, to the point where they had to bring somebody up in mid-season. So I think that if Satia builds up that front court and makes it a three-person thing, if I'm being honest, I actually think that she might need something that's more of like a three big type of thing, where one of them is kind of like that mix of a guard, like that mix of guard forward type of thing. And I think that's going to be the type of UCF team that succeeds in the Big 12. Like the guards already are down. I think Layla and Caitlin will be there.
Yeah, but I'm going to disagree with this. I think they need a better guard than Peterson to compete in the Big 12. If you're in the American, I think you can win with Peterson as your best guard. But I think watching, you need a guard. You need her to be your second or third best guard to compete in the Big 12. I mean, this is the top 3 league in the sport.
I will say in Caitlin's defense, she's 25th in the country in scoring.
Oh, it's not a knock on her. I'm just saying from a team winning standpoint, because there's too much of it. She's not an efficient player. I think if you got a backcourt mate that could help produce points consistently with her, and she's like the second option, then I think this team is a lot better, and it's a postseason team perhaps if they have the size in the front court. But it's a rebuild. It's a building thing, and she's got to build it through recruiting, and we'll see what they look like. But there's a lot of hurdles there.
And I don't want to discount the chance for her to look at the transfer portal too. I mean, we talked about the 4.
Well, that's the thing. It's a lot easier. There's multiple ways to build it.
So
I mean, you look at Maya
last
Burns.
Point, Bryson.
You look at Maya Burns. Like you mentioned, how you need that second guard to go with her. Whenever Maya Burns has had really good scoring games this year, she served that role, and those were some of the best games that UCF produced. Even those wins in Big 12 play, Maya Burns was a key role in that. And when you look at when Maya Burns was down, those were usually the games where UCF ended up losing by like double digits in games that like they shouldn't have. Like this Kansas one, for instance, I think is a major point.
I also think, by the way, this is my daily reminder in the day and age of the portal. Don't assume that everybody's coming back. So let's not assume we always get caught up in
as you always say, Eric. Let it play out.
Well, she's retained Layla Jewett, an Abe-era player, this long. I feel like Messer has a really good way of retaining players. I feel like.
Yeah, I hope you're right. All right, so UCF right now, like you said, Eric, UCF and Houston will determine who gets the 13 or 14 seed. The Big 12 championship starts next Thursday, March.
Look who's joining us. The man, the myth.
Look at that. Look at who's here. All right. Just in time. The student of the game, Kyle Nash, in the house. We were just talking about the Magic game, and we're actually just wrapping up women's basketball. If UCF is the 13, they will play 6:30 Eastern on Thursday against the number 12 seed, which at the moment is Texas Tech. Texas Tech and Cincinnati are the other two in that bottom 4 there, 12 and 13. So if UCF finishes in last, they would probably get Cincinnati, but we'll have to see how the last weekend shakes out. Obviously, Oklahoma right now 15-2 at the top of the league. Kyle Nash. So, and that's the you know what? I'll give it, being that as it is, women's basketball. Kyle, we'll leave you with the last word. And if you can wave your magic wand, what do you want to get this offseason?
I mean, I feel like Coach Besser already has it waiting in the wings, right? We got a little bit more height coming in. There's a recruit that's 6'8", that's going to be walking in the door here upcoming next season. Coach mentions her in particular in the post game that you can find on the Black and Gold Banneret YouTube channel.
Hang on, I got it. There.
See, I was patient enough to not voice that. And in that one, there's that. I would also, and I think Bryson and I were talking about this off air too, I would really like to see somebody who can threaten in multiple parts of the court, and offensively and defensively, like Maya Burns does. She's going to be a big miss. I think she's one of the underappreciated parts of this squad. Think Tay Sanders from the Coach Abe era, but would not disappear for games at a time. Constantly a presence, at the very least, on the boards as an oversized guard, or I would think a good comparison to the men's game is CJ Kelly last year, though Maya was never asked to run point.
Right. All right. By the way, the student of the game is here in due time for us to chat a little football and a little.
Well, let's get him. Let's talk about a player he got to see though at Kia Center.
Oh, that's right. Because you were, before we do that, you saw yourself some Taylor Hendricks tonight, didn't you, Kyle Nash? How did he look?
I did. Listen, by the way, I remember, watching him play against American Athletic Conference players and seeming like, I believe members of the media would refer to as a grown bleep man. Standing next to other NBA players, despite the fact he's not old enough to drink, still looks like he belongs there. And I think that's impressive just physically in and of itself. Talked with coach after the game, and the Jazz coach had a lot of good things to say about a developing player. I mean, let's put some
Will
things.
Hardy, yeah.
Yeah, Will Hardy. He put some perspective on being a 9th pick. I think a lot of people, especially let's just say zealous UCF hater fans, as I like to refer to them, the Fire Dawkins crowd, right? They might have been a little put off by the fact he started out as a G League player, now currently in his 4th straight start for the Jazz, going into this Magic game tonight here on Leap Day. So, it's funny. The first time Paolo tried to drive on him, he turned his shot away. Not that he rejected him or anything, but he made it a hard enough effort to put an all-star putting up a shot off the glass that looked awful. Now, Paolo figured out that he could out-muscle him, but Paolo Banchero being the 9th all-star in Magic history, he's not a slouch. And Coach Hardy, after the game, mentioned that he's going to need to learn how to battle players of various sizes, where he's not always going to be another guy he's had to battle. You may have heard of Victor Wembanyama, who's 7 whatever, I think 7'8's the number. But yeah, this is a whole thing where he's getting used to challenging different body types. But something I heard, not just from Coach, but other members of the Utah media that were in town, mentioned talking to Taylor in the past and being a guy that is open to feedback, that is admitting, hey, I don't know everything about
coachable.
Basketball.
Yeah.
I think the way in the particular example was screening in the NBA is a completely different art form than what he had seen. By the way, people in the room who aren't surprised that that's the case, those of us that talk to him at Edition Financial Arena.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, it's good. We saw him during the All-Star break. He came to Orlando, caught some UCF hoops. And it was good to see him coming back in. The Jazz right now are in 11th in the West, but they're 4 games back of 10th. Mm-hmm. So, Elo, I wonder, based on what you saw too, they're kind of in. I don't think they're in real playoff mode right now.
Not really, and I think that's why they're starting Hendricks, is to get him some reps, get him developed. Yeah. I mean, he was a first-round lottery pick, and I think I'm glad that Kyle was there. He got 10.7 boards, 27 minutes. He's going to benefit from this, playing against
above all his averages, by the way, going into his, I think this would be his 21st game that he played in his 4th straight start.
Yeah.
And I would be remiss to if I didn't mention Walker Kessler not being in the lineup for the Utah Jazz. Yeah. This means they were asking a lot of Taylor Hendricks defensively. And listen, the only problem he had was Paolo is just a stronger guy than him. That's how Paolo got points on the board.
He should be. I mean, he should be. He's a year old, he's older. He's been an all-star. I mean, that makes sense. So that's not Taylor. They'll get him into the weight room.
He's a franchise guy.
The thing about Taylor, and some of the UCF fans don't understand this because they're like, well, how could you not make the tournament with a lottery pick? This is a completely different NBA draft than it was back in the 80s and 90s when the Magic drafted Shaq. When the Magic drafted Shaq could make a difference day one. That's not the case anymore with these lottery guys. I mean, Kyle, you saw Victor Wembanyama, who's supposed to be the next greatest thing ever. Spurs stink. Now, it's not his fault necessarily.
Oh, it's not his fault. He's actually been pretty good this year.
He's good, but he's developing, and that's the point. Right. The draft's become more about developmental. Like if Taylor Hendricks would have played.
Go ahead, Jeff. I was going to say, sorry to interrupt, Eric, but and Wembanyama is way more developed being a European player, having been for 3 years,
correct,
as opposed to an American college player, right?
And here's the thing, like. If Taylor Hendricks if this was college basketball 1985 or 1995, and Taylor Hendricks played 3 years at UCF and was a lottery pick, and you didn't make the tournament, then I would agree. That's a valid criticism.
Yep.
But these days, these guys, they're there being drafted for potential. And Kyle, you just addressed why the Jazz took him, because he's a guy that can challenge guys in the rim and can play multiple positions and guard guys with multiple positions, which he was asked to do at UCF. He is not a guy that's going to score 25, 30 points and carry a team, at least not at this stage of his youth. He definitely was not that at UCF. So I just want to clear that up because I get annoyed when people bring that up because this is not the NBA draft of 1990.
Yeah, I think you're right. I feel like his ideal situation, not his ceiling, his ideal situation is kind of being like the Otis Thorpe to someone else's Hakeem Olajuwon.
For sure. Yeah. And I think, like I said, the fact they're playing him and they're starting him, I think is huge because I think the Jazz will make some moves in the offseason, maybe clear up, like Kyle mentioned, Walker Kessler's had an injury-plagued season. Collins, they haven't been happy with. Markkanen's their best player. But this is a good opportunity for
force in the paint tonight than Collins. I'll say that straight up. I mean, to listen, let me add to this. I felt like, and call me biased if you like, for having covered him the year that I did. And basically, by the way, for those who were wondering, totally stuck with the headband look going to the NBA, not for nothing. But as much as we talk about uniforms, I thought that would be worth mention. But listen, on that floor, I felt like he was a dominant presence. He certainly, I felt like, had a better game than Collins did tonight. I think the one.
I agree with that. I mean, Collins has been a disappointment. I question why the Jazz made the move the first place to get Collins. I think in retrospect, but I think they felt that they wanted to give Hendricks more time before they threw him just out there.
Yeah. Well, as evidenced by his time in the G League. But yeah, listen, he's not. He's certainly not the same guy we saw this time a year ago. By the way, gentlemen, you thought I was joking about him being unable to drink yet. Does not turn 21 until November of this year. So there you go.
Fair. Kyle, you were there. I'm curious. Give us an idea of the coverage around Taylor. Because you and I, Kyle, have exchanged messages over the last 72 hours on this. And we're not going to get into all the weeds and stuff about it. But because trust me, I would just vent for like 2 hours about the NBA and some of their media policies. But the fact that you don't make your local guy available to the local media is hilarious to me. But anyway, what was the coverage like as far as the media and all that? Because you and I talked Taco Fall when he was coming from the Celtics. That was a huge story locally. I was fortunate to cover it. Brian Murphy helped me at the time. There was a lot of UCF was there in person. There was a lot of TV media, et cetera, et cetera. But you made a great point to me there. That was coming off that NCAA tournament year. Taco had this phenomenon by the national media with the local side. So I don't get a sense it was as big of a deal with Taylor coming into town. It kind of snuck up on people, but you were there. So give me an idea. Am I accurate? What was it like there?
I mean, I'll say this, as far as UCF outlets and names you've come to expect that cover the various UCF sports. Granted, nobody covers as many UCF sports overall as we do at the Black and Gold Banneret. Bing! But
you didn't.
But all the usual suspects. I needed that one because I was being cocky. I'm sorry, Jeff. But all of the major outlets that you see, at a lot of UCF events, the ones that you would see, let's say, alongside of Bryson and Nick or even Eric covering stickball, you would see if they had, enough expansion, you would kind of see those. The only surprise that I felt like was air quotes missing tonight was maybe a Brandon Hellwig. I was kind of shocked not to see him, but all the other outlets that you come to see, the Suns were represented. Shouts to Andrew, by the way. I think there was some NSM people in the building. I saw some tweets, from others who were live, the Elite Empire group, for example. There's the UCF usual suspects, not Brandon, were there. But as far as fanfare, it certainly didn't feel like it got the local TV attention, for example. They weren't set up. They weren't attempting to get any feedback from the Jazz that were in town. I'm wondering if News 13 even knew that Taylor was in town until tonight,
right.
You could think that,
And Taylor for
the for him like I did, I would have been.
And we're not going to get into details, but as I understand it, Kyle, Taylor was not made available to the local media after the game.
No, it wasn't. I did see him, briefly as he was coming off the court. Maybe he recognizes me, maybe he doesn't. But yeah, that was really the extent of what was made available to us there as the media. But did have an opportunity to talk to Coach Will Hardy after the game, and he had a very, what I would call a very balanced analysis of it. And maybe you see some element of that here coming up soon on the Black and Gold Banneret.
Right. Good. It's good to hear.
Yeah. All right. Let's move forward to. I wanted to talk a little bit about this with but we're gonna listen before I lose my what.
Kyle, you came at the right time, Kyle. That's great. I'm looking forward to this. I can't wait.
We're going to wrap with baseball, softball, and track and field. And I want Bryson to get on the track and field stuff. But
Oh, God.
The latest on the CFP, Eric, because there's some rumors flying around. Obviously, let's reset for everybody. Everyone's talking about these formats. We have this 12-team format that's going to work for the next 2 seasons, right? 5 conference champs, 7 at-larges. They're working on the next season after, which is 26, right, Eric?
Yes. The next 2 years is locked in. It's a 12-team field, et cetera. Yeah.
2026 and beyond. TV contract is kind of like right there with ESPN, pretty much. Now they're trying to work out the format. There are rumors aplenty.
Reports.
The most prominent one that's out here. All right. Ross Dellinger, and I want to get this up so that I get this correct. Okay, Ross Dellinger is reporting that they're working on a 14-team format. Good. I'm saying good. I like that. All right.
I don't, but separate question.
Okay, here's where I'm not all that happy about it is the allocation of automatic bids. Here's how it's going to look. Eric's cackling like a super villain. It's like, this is great. All right, listen to this. 3 automatic qualifier spots to the Big Ten and the SEC. So that's 6. 2 automatic qualifiers to the Big 12 and the ACC. This is like the World Cup. 1 automatic qualifier to the best G5 school. Okay, well, at least we've got that. And 3 at-large spots. Now, thinking about this is my personal take right off the bat. All right. Number 1, I'm not a big fan of giving out more than 1 AQ spot. But if you're dropping the number of at-larges down to 3, that opens the door for teams not in the SEC and Big Ten, I feel, based on how those other teams. Hang on, let me finish it. If you've got, a UCF that has a very good year, say they win 12 games, but somehow get locked out of the Big 12 championship game due to some stupid tiebreaker, could possibly see them get in over a 9-win SEC team.
I wouldn't hold my breath on that.
4th.
Be careful about. See, notice how he worded that. I wouldn't hold my breath on it, but it would certainly be far more possible than anything you would see today.
Right.
I shouldn't say
unless UCF injures their quarterback, then they'll use that excuse to leave them out of the playoff to put in another team that has multiple losses.
Okay.
That's been done, but we already have a trend on that.
Okay,
we already have a trend.
Osceola. Okay,
it's so weak that FSU wanted out of it before the season started.
No, listen, Kyle. No, listen. That is why if I'm in the Big 12 and the ACC, I am racing to sign this now.
Oh, you see, you beat me there. I agree with you.
Yeah. Because here's the thing. This is the best you're going to do. You're not going to get better than this. And I disagree, Jeff. Those at-large spots are going to the SEC, Big Ten, and Notre Dame. And I think the other secret part about this.
I'm with you on the Notre Dame part.
Yes. Well, and I do think Notre Dame's going to have to really think about joining the Big Ten. I think there's a play in that.
Eric, I was going to say, forgive me for interjecting, but I think you're 100% right on this, because guess what happened earlier today or earlier this week? UMass, an independent, joined the MAC. Now, here's why that matters. We have how many independents left?
I believe it's Notre Dame and Well, but UMass is irrelevant. They're embarrassment.
But it is becoming untenable to be an independent in FBS college football.
Well, I'm going to say this. That's because
I know you can't compare UMass to Notre Dame, but
because UMass is dumb. They think they can be something in football. They're not. They're a basketball school, and they've betrayed them. But that's a whole other story. Don't even get me started, because schools like UMass shouldn't have football, period. With all due respect to my friend.
That's another argument.
Anyway.
I'm not going to disagree with you on that, okay?
But here's what I enjoy.
Shout out to our boy Reedy and Gold.
I know, he's going to hate that comment. But, I mean, look, I think of Marcus Camby before I think of UMass football.
I think of Reedy, so how about that? Okay, anyway, go on.
Here's the thing. This is what exactly was going to happen. they weren't going to stop at 12. I don't think they're going to stop at 14. I think they're going to go to 16 before this is all said and done. And I think what it's going to be is the SEC and the Big Ten will get the majority of the spots. And now my surprise is giving the Big 10, the Big 12 and the ACC, hey, here's your piece of the pie. Here's 2 guaranteed spots, which is way more than you would get in the 12-team playoff. And I think we'll see what happens. I know there's a lot of egos involved and stuff like that, but yeah, I mean, they're ruining the sport. Like, there's no reason to play a conference championship game with 3 like, how are you gonna? What's the point of having 3 automatic bids? Why play a championship game? What's the point?
Okay, first of all, let's inject one more thing, because Eric Lopez, a conversation you and I had on the Student of the Game podcast recently,
yeah, that's correct.
implicated that, hey, by the time they make this, thank you, Jeff, by the time they would even think to make this deal, which to this point is rumor, sorry, not report, but rumor,
Right.
the ACC may not even bleeping exist, partner.
Yes, he's right about that.
You mean the ACC?
Yeah, the ACC. That's what he said.
The SEC will be more than exist. I think there's going to be, look, there's a lot of questions. Well, what does the SEC and Big Ten decide to pull away? And for the reason they're doing 14, the reason why they're mad is because what Ross Dellinger reported on Thursday, the SEC and the Big Ten want those 2 bye weeks guaranteed. That's the thing. That's what's got the ACC and Big 12 all upset about is. And I got news for you, the ACC and the Big 12. The SEC is always going to get a top seed. I'm sorry. They're going to get the bye. I hate to break it to you. Ever. They're always going to get it. So deal with it. I'm not even an SEC guy.
I would posit, guys, that where the challenge, I think, is going to be where those conference championships, where are they going to want, if they don't matter? And I agree with you. Like, at this point, it's like, what's the point? But they're going to try and find a way to make them matter. So how do you make them matter? Do you guarantee that the buys go to a conference champion?
So
yes,
a couple of things. Yeah, that's one. First of all, 2, like, we're talking about the automatic qualifiers. That's all a matter of interpretation, right? The one way you can guarantee to be automatically qualified is to win the championship. To that extent, it matters. Right. 2, to we, the fans, it may matter less, but to players and coaches, those games do matter, right? That's what builds resumes for jobs, and not just for coaches, but for prospects who are trying to play at the next level. Now, does that link to every single college player? No, but those are pieces that do matter to some of the guys on the field. Will you have opt-outs of the conference championships? That's the part that scares me, because
ding.
I was present at the Citrus Bowl, my first college football credentialed event, where Leonard Fournette sat out under Coach Orgeron battling.
This was your fault, Kyle. This was all your fault.
The 2017 is attributed to me as well for UCF, so let's not forget that. Anyways, so I know you tried to give Murph credit for stealing it from me, but that's not a thing. I said it. No. Listen, if he wasn't a baseball guy, I wouldn't make that comment. The punchline's this, though, guys. I think that the maneuver, if you are the SEC or the Big Ten, or, let's really put the dang tinfoil hat on and collude further, right? If you're the media companies that are attached to them, you float this. This is a classic negotiation technique. You float this, you scare the bejesus out of them, and then you talk it down to 2 qualified from each of those conferences. Because even that is a crappy deal for anybody that's not those conferences.
Well,
right?
Well, and let me say this. I don't even think the player has to sit out, Kyle. You're concerned. I could see coaches sitting them, resting them, because you've got a lot of games coming up. You see this in the NFL already with guys resting in week 18. And I think we can all agree this model is headed towards the NFL model. That's what this is all about. We're going to the NFL model, and I do think we're going to go to 16 at some point. Here's my question to both of you, for you guys. If we're going to do that, can we at least now get rid of these scrimmages known as the FCS games and really play a quality schedule? You play quality games every week like the NFL. You play your teams in your conference, and just not – I mean, if you want to do an FCS for an August scrimmage, whatever, that's fine. But I think those games should get rid of if you're going to expand the tournament.
Only if you allow a preseason. That's it.
Right. Because that's what they are. They're preseason games. They're not regular season games. But there is no preseason that doesn't count in college football. So they're going to play, they're going to play those games as preseason games. And are a few of those teams going to get, nicked in that first week or second week? Yeah, probably. But that's the cost. Yeah, but that's the cost of doing business. I think.
Literally, because the reason why the smaller schools don't want to get rid of those, Eric, is because they need revenue more.
Well, I didn't say that. I didn't say the G5s. I didn't say them. I said the FCS.
No, I know.
That does not.
You're right.
My answer, Eric Lopez.
That's the thing. FAMU's entire athletic budget gets paid for by whoever they play.
And you know what my reaction to that is? Figure it out yourself. Why do you need somebody else to help you? Go play. That's your. That's not the problem of a UCF. Why is that their problem?
Well, remember, a lot of those institutions are state institutions, and
doesn't mean they play. If that was the case, why aren't they playing every year?
But I'm not talking about it from a football perspective. I'm talking about it from an education department perspective.
Cool.
They want
be an educational school.
But again, how do you hear about them without a football program? We talk about it all the time. Athletics is the front door to a lot of those places.
My argument is not everybody should have a football program.
Right, but that's a separate argument, right? They have a football program now. If you're FAMU, say I would put in a rule that says if you're going to play an FCS team and you're an FBS team, you got to play a school that is either in your state, preferably a public school, or within 250 miles of where you are.
I like that. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. Right? That should help your attendance. I'm for that.
The guy
helps your attendance, and you're also helping schools in your state.
Keep in mind, the guy that suggested the USF rivalry shouldn't die is the one suggesting this.
It's not going to happen. But look, I would just get rid of the game in general. Just get rid because if you're going to have at-large spots, if you're going to try to expand this playoff, then let's get a real resume. Like in college basketball, teams aren't playing Division III teams just to warm up, in December, in January. They shouldn't. They shouldn't.
Beg to differ. I saw that out of town scoreboard on the first night of college basketball, and there were some schools that were popping up playing D1 schools that I seriously I didn't think they were schools. I thought they were cable companies.
Keep in mind, there's over 300 basketball programs, so that's why
in Division I.
Yeah. Now we could argue that's a whole other argument whether that's too many or not. I don't know. I'll let the college basketball people debate that, but. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But
how else are they going to get notoriety too, Eric? Like, let's say you have an Easton Stick or a Trey Lance or a quarterback like that has the opportunity to make your school look great by getting drafted to the NFL. They ain't going to make it on TV without playing a big school and showing their talents against actual talent. Right? That's another thing you got to think about here.
But isn't that why you guys have your little spring football?
Huh?
Well, you're not going to get other teams to play.
Are you dragging the UFL into this? Is that what you're trying to do?
Yes, I am. I'm taking a shot at the UFL. That's all I'm doing. Thank you very much.
They're not in the state anymore. Why?
I was going to say, how's Orlando season, Red? No,
don't twist that knife any further than that. Okay.
The problem with haters, Jeff, is they're
going to hate. They're going to hate. All right.
I know. Anyway. I was right. Anyway, on that league.
Anyway, I want to move on from this, but I'm just going to ask you, Eric, is there a timeline for when they plan on deciding?
They claim March because they want to get this because ESPN could pull the offer in theory, and they don't want that.
ESPN ain't pulling that offer, man. What are they talking about?
If they could, from a leverage, there's no other buyers right now. That's the thing. Kyle and I talked about this. Where are they? Where are they?
Real quick, before we jump into that, because that's a good combo. Gentlemen, there is a very real possibility that something happens to Disney/ESPN's books, and they're like, you know what? We're hemorrhaging entirely too much cash to take this much risk, if they even sniff any risk. Not to say that they will.
When you got Fox kind of sneaking around in there, man.
The problem is with the playoffs scheduled for January, Fox can't commit to it because they have properties to this thing called the National Football League, which I don't know how you can verify is pretty popular.
Let me stop. Okay. Eric, I'm going to use your own argument against you. They're going to turn around and use it as a lead-in to the NFL playoffs.
I don't think the NFL wants that. The NFL doesn't want that.
Well, okay. Then if the NFL intervenes and stops Fox from doing it, it's a separate question.
There was reports that the NFL wasn't happy that the quarterfinal games are scheduled on the weekend of the NFL Week 17 or something like that. They're not happy about that already. So that's why I think some of the TV partners are shying away, because you don't want to be on the bad side of the NFL.
Well, okay. Well, then I asked the next obvious question. What about NBC?
NBC also has the NFL. It's called Sunday Night Football. Again,
but again, that's not a Sunday afternoon, and they don't televise as many games as Fox.
No, but again, the NFL does not want their broadcast partners to put a college football game, playoff game, opposite them, no matter what the network is.
So what I hear you saying, Eric, is that the NFL is setting the table for Amazon or a streaming partner like that, a one of these new tech partners to step in, fill that college void, and then make themselves a player in the sports media market that they weren't before. Because that's the kind of stuff that could create giants, Eric Lopez. If you somehow come out of this controlling the college football playoff, you can build on that. That's something that can make a giant. Now,
so you're talking the college football playoff on Amazon Prime TV,
for example. Yes.
Amazon just spent $150 million on Thursday Night Football.
But here's the thing: I
don't like that.
I don't know if it was the NFL, which is one corporate entity. That's one thing. You're talking about like a gazillion different corporate entities with college football that you have to get to agree to that. I don't know if you can get all of those conferences to agree
with the money they're throwing around, Jeff. I think they could find a way. I really do. Now, granted, will it happen tomorrow? Will it happen, in 25? Hell no. Right. But they could start setting the roots. I'm not saying they'll get there by 26, but boy, howdy, they can do something that makes some of these college entities think about it. And again,
I don't know, man.
The landscape is changing entirely too much for us to think we know what it is. For one, one of the Power 5 entities is gone. That's one less group they got to talk to. So it's not 5 anymore, it's 4. The ACC may be gone. Now it's not 4 anymore, it's 3. By the way, 2 of them are talking about breaking off to form a subdivision at the behest, by the way, of the
one of them is one school.
Notre Dame had that adorable thing where it was dominating off to the side for a while, but even all this is going on. I was laughed at 2 years ago on this show for saying that Notre Dame may somehow be sucked up by a Big Ten conference. Now, Eric Lopez has come around with me on the ACC, and the Notre Dame winter is coming. I'm telling you.
I do agree. Especially remember, NBC is just re-upped with NBC, which also has a piece of the Big Ten coverage.
There you go. So with all that in mind, the punchline being this, and it was, by the way, it was that NBC deal that you brought up and talked very intelligently on that took me there. So really, it's your fault if you don't like the theory, Eric. I'm joking.
Fair.
But the subdivision that's coming out, what if that becomes a real thing? By the way, at the behest of Charlie Baker, president of the damn NCAA, whose own life is threatening. Now you're down to 2 controlling parties. We had this conversation on this podcast before, Jeff, on a different edition of the Night Shift.
Dadgummit.
It's correct.
There.
This is why he does that. This is why he's locally.
And that, if that's the case, that they are dealing with just those 2 entities, Jeff, I tell you, you're going to try to get me to believe that Amazon can't swing that.
It's way more interests that have their own thing that, listen, it took us this. Eric reminds me of this all the time, right? It took us this long just to get a playoff of some kind in this godforsaken sport. So, because of their,
if you call it that, some would argue this is still an invitational.
A, B, we've not stopped changing from that. The only reason we haven't, listen, I hear your point that the BSC, I said what I said, that the BSC lived as long as it did, okay? And it's because a lot of old farts were running the show. Well, this thing called the interwebs happened, and people got involved, and change started to happen. And then the college football playoff happened in such a fashion that debate. But listen, a lot of the reason why, I'm going to say this with pride and props to Danny White, but a lot of the reason why you're still seeing a lot of the thunder involving the call for change in the college football playoff, in a big part, could be because of UCF and what they did.
In part, I think that's right.
So for the record, real quick, and we'll move on. You hate the 14-team playoff cut.
I do.
I don't hate it.
Oh, I
don't. The more, the merrier.
Oh God. Yeah, we want 8. Yeah, let's bring in the 5th place SEC team there. Oh, good old Ole Miss.
Now you know what I said. I said this 6 years ago, and you laughed at me then. You'll laugh at me now. I don't think it's a true playoff unless you have one representative from every FBS conference.
Well,
I know we're not going to get that.
Yeah,
I know. I know.
You're not even going to get that in basketball in the next 7 years.
Let's
too bad.
The G League to the NBA playoffs, Eric.
Say what?
That's too bad.
Let's invite the G League to the NBA playoffs, Eric. How about that?
See, I think the real comparison is Eric prefers, Kyle, see if I'm right about this. Eric prefers the UEFA, FIFA kind of format, right? Uneven bids. I prefer more.
No, I don't.
I prefer more FA Cup, right? Level the playing field and let the cream rise to the top.
That's not realistic in football here. I'm sorry.
I agree with the concept of the English Premier League. If you suck, you get demoted. Okay.
Pretty much. There you go.
Well, speaking, I'll take things that'll never happen for 500, Alex.
No, that's not going to happen either.
Not what we preferred. I threw mine on the table. That's all I did.
Don't worry, Kyle. Just wait.
We're in the middle of doing that. We're in the middle of doing that right now in college football as the reboot happens. Teams are getting demoted left and right. Just ask the Pac-12.
Kyle, wait until college basketball expands to 90 and St. Peter's is not even in the mix. Oh boy, Jeff's going to lose his mind.
Yeah, I'm gonna lose more than my mind, Eric.
I know you are.
Why is Syracuse in the tournament, Eric Lopez?
Why? We got it. All right, we're gonna move on.
That was fun.
Okay, we're gonna go rapid fire here. Okay, ready?
Yes.
Eric Lopez, softball, 8-6.
Yes.
Right now it's uneven, but a really tough. Like we said, we thought it would be tough like this, right? UNF, which was supposed to be last night, got moved to April 2nd. Yep. They got this home tournament now coming up. Princeton, number 22, South Carolina, Kennesaw State, Bethune-Cookman come to town. Then it's Stetson, and then it's off we go into Big 12 play.
Right.
So what's the your analysis of the Mary Nutter, where they did get a couple wins, one against Oregon State, one against San Diego, and then spin that forward. Are they where they more or less want to be right now?
So 3 thoughts. Number 1, having covered Nutter and living in the West Coast, basically acting like I was living in the West Coast time, we should just do away with Eastern time and Central time zones and just all of us be on the West time zone, because it's kind of cool that it's like 1 a.m. Pacific and every sporting event is done instead of 4 a.m., which was the case for UCF Oregon State. I'm just saying,
the greatest sport viewing experiences of my life have always been in the Pacific time zone.
Seriously, man.
Listen, having prime rib for breakfast while watching football kicks ass. I don't care who you are, y'all.
10 a.m. NFL, baby. Bring me some more. Carry on.
I've done that through travel. So anyway, that's on the side. I was covering Nutter. No, they're not where they want to be. They had chances to win those games, in particular Mississippi State and Oregon. They had bases loaded, 1 out, didn't deliver. And that's the thing. Their offense is not where they want it to be. I think there's some pressure. Some players are playing too much pressure on them. And I think one of the things, Jeff, that all the UCF teams, but I think softball is learning this, playing with expectations. It used to be you go 2-4 Nutter, great. That's awesome. No problem. No, that's not good enough anymore. Mm-hmm. You want a regional. Now the expectations are, can you win another regional? Now you got to get used to playing like the Power 5 schools are playing with high expectations. And I think some of these players are carrying that in their at-bat when they're trying to hit a grand slam when there's nobody on base, right? So I think that's a concern moving forward. Hopefully they're working through that. Their pitching was much better at Mary Nutter. That was the big positive. But this is an important weekend. South Carolina's ranked in the top 25, and it should be really good. Could be the best pitching matchup of the country with Elena Vaughter, an All-American for South Carolina against Willis. But I think it's an important weekend because you mentioned it. The Big 12 is next weekend. It's not like the American. We had 3 or 4 extra weeks. Yeah. It's now, and it's the same for baseball. So that's the key there.
Can I ask you a quick question, Eric?
Sure.
Do you think that they're pressing because they see that Big 12 conference coming down the pike? They're like, hey, man, we got to get it together because conference play is coming. It's the Big 12. Blah, blah, blah. And that's why they're pressing.
I think that's a combination of things, but I think that's one of them. And I think also you'll add to the fact some of there's 11 seniors. And sometimes as a senior, you're pressing. Hey, this is my last year.
Sports mortality is coming into focus.
Right. And you're like, we can get to the World Series. We can get to the Supers. But you got to get through February, March, and April. And again, I think they will be better off for the program. I think every UCF team, like, expectations are different. It used to be, hey, you beat Wisconsin and lose to North Carolina. That's a good result. Now it's considered a disappointment, whether that's fair. It's kind of like the football treatment. Softball's getting the football treatment where the bar is higher now. And that's going to be, when you're a Power 5 school, that comes with the territory, and I think they're learning through that.
Elo, I was about to say that expectation transcends sport. And when I say that, I don't just mean UCF softball versus UCF football, although your point is spot on. That transcends leagues. That transcends.
Agreed.
That is a sports problem, 100%.
So, go ahead, Eric. I'm sorry.
No, I agree 100%. Remember, this program has won a lot. So they've gained a lot of fans, and there's, just like football, gained a lot of fans after 2017. So you might say there's some fans that have, quote, unrealistic expectations or whatever you want to describe it. That applies to softball. But I think players are feeling that sometimes when they're at the plate, when they should just relax and be themselves, and they might be okay. But it's easier said than done. In sports like softball and baseball, it's so mental that it's a constant thing.
You got a busy weekend coming up. 5 games at home for
Sure.
UCF, 2 against Princeton. You got Princeton, South Carolina on Friday, Princeton again on Saturday, Kennesaw and Bethune on Sunday. What's the outlook here for this little tournament? Because Carolina's coming in 22nd in the country. Right?
Yeah, very good. Rematch of the regionals last year in Tallahassee when South Carolina eliminated FSU. It's a big game. UCF looking for that signature non-conference win. This could be it if they could beat them. They need to play well because, like you said, Jeff, Big 12 starts next weekend, and the Big 12 is no joke. The good news is, unlike the American, you still have a lot of opportunities to build your resume. You got 4 teams in the top 25, including the 2 best teams in the country. Bad news is you still have 4 teams in your top 25 in the conference, including the 2 best teams in the country. You got to play. That's a problem, and they're coming here. Holy macro, that is going to be, it's going to be wild.
Check this out. Oklahoma to start the season, 14-0. Texas 13-1. Oklahoma State 15-2. Texas Tech 13-3. BYU 12-3. Houston's 12-5. UCF is hanging out at 8-6. And hey, we talked about competition in basketball, man.
It's the level, and that's why I try to remind people. I said I think this team is good, but don't be surprised if they don't have as good of a record as they've had the last couple of years. And you just read off part of the reason why.
Hey, Elo, let me add this real quick too. For the other sports that have exceeded expectation, I can make an argument that women's basketball it looks better than expected, although they are still kind of where they are. But the men's basketball team, let me tell you, buddy, if you don't like the women's example, cool. How many quad 1 wins does UCF men's basketball have again?
Oh, I agree. And they still have room to add more, which is kind of nuts.
You're going to get some more chances here in the next couple
remarkable.
weeks.
Yeah. So put it through. That'll be good. And if they finish strong, case closed. Team of the year.
All right. 8-6. Princeton and South Carolina on Friday. What's the first pitch, Eric?
3:30.
And you're doing all 5 of them?
All of them, baby, on ESPN Plus. You don't have to watch softball every home game.
Is it you and Fran or what?
It's me and Fran's coaching at Florida, so she's not available now.
Oh, that's right. I forgot.
We're a big deal, Kyle, when they take our analysts to be coaches, just like in football.
You don't get awards by not being good at your job, Eric Lopez.
That's correct. So it'll be me and Alex Powers, 2-time All-American. Florida will be my analyst on Friday. Then I'll do the games by myself. Saturday,
Fran. Sorry, Alex. Jeez, man, I can get it.
Well, Alex will be with us. He'll be good.
All right, baseball. Let's get the human whirlwind Bryson Turner back in here. What a weekend for UCF baseball, Bryson Turner. They come in, they face the defending Southern Conference champions and the favorites in that conference, Samford, and they wipe the floor with them. 39 runs in 3 games. 2 of them where they got run ruled 2 of them were run rule games that got shortened after 7. And UCF gets the sweep. Then they go out down to Boca and they beat FAU 11-6. Can't really ask for for a much better start if you're Rich Wallace than going 6-0 against. People can joke about Samford and Son, but Samford's a good baseball team. At least they're expected to be coming into this year. So, give us the thoughts right now on this team that scored 50 runs in its last 4 games as they get ready to take on our old friends from the West, South Florida, at home this coming weekend, Bryson Turner. But this is a pretty good 4-game stretch for UCF baseball right now.
Oh, yes. You are looking at the leading team in the nation in batting average, 385, and also in strikeout to walk ratio at 6.56. They're not just relying
Still early, but
well, look, they're not but the thing is for me is they're not as reliant on the long ball. Don't get me wrong, the long ball definitely does help. Andrew Estrella, 3 home runs in 3 games. Amazing performance out of him. But they don't have to rely on it every time. They are scoring they're really scoring. And the pitching is also, I think, better. I don't know what happened opening weekend, but ever since after opening weekend, the pitching has honestly been fairly solid. Dom Stagliano, Dominic Castellano had a really good start. Ben Vespi had a very solid start. Chase Santala really doing well in that save position. Kate Boxrucker had a really good performance starting in the midweeks. He's been a really good midweek starter. So this team has really improved on the positions where it needs to have improved on at least a little bit, which is pitching. And then the batting has stayed, I would argue, relatively similarly good to what it was last year, but they're actually hitting. They're not striking out as much because sure, they hit a lot of home runs last year, but they also struck out a lot. And this time around, that's not happening as much. They're actually stringing together runs. I think, honestly, the only thing that I would say is you definitely want to make sure you can score inning after inning, because sometimes this team really needs a big inning. But then again, that means this team is a threat to have a big inning at any point in time. And that is definitely something you want to have going into the Big 12. Now, granted, again, this is non-conference play, so of course, maybe things are going to be different in the Big 12. But look what they did against Miami, who has been a very powerhouse baseball program. Look at FAU, who has that legendary coach over there, and also has has produced major leaguers. You look at Samford, leader of the SoCon. You definitely do not want to underestimate
The SoCon. Wow!
So the point,
SoCon jams. Woo!
Well, remember, 2 years ago, Samford beat them in a series 2 years ago. So to see them absolutely wallop them like this year, the improvement over last year is there. Now, is that improvement going to be enough for the Big 12? That's going to be the question, and we're not going to know that for a little while. For the moment, they have South Florida, which is going to be which is great. Warren I-4 continuing over there, but also Florida. Oh man, this next midweek going to Gainesville to face a ranked Florida team who just lost in DeLand to Stetson. Florida looked mortal in that game. So over this next week is going to be very interesting to see, because if they can establish some momentum going into conference play, that will be huge. And by the way, they're already off to their best start since 2017. They're 6-0 right now. They were 7-0 in 2017. So they could actually beat 2017's start if they can get a few string together some more wins this weekend against South Florida.
Elo, I get the feeling that you're about to that you're going to pour.
No, listen, I'm enjoying Kyle having a beverage while he's listening. He's drinking some Long Island tea.
Hey, don't rub it in. I don't have any beer in the house. I'm driving.
No, I want to make a point. You're drinking some nice Long Island iced tea. The same Long Island iced tea that beat Miami this past weekend in baseball. That's the point. So let's settle down on the Miami. This ain't Jim Morris. Jim Morris ain't walking through that door in Miami, Coral Gables. Not Ron Frazier ain't walking through that Coral Gables. And that FAU team lost to Florida Gulf Coast. We all know FAU is a basketball school after all. And oh, by the way, and I hate doing this, but it drives me nuts with these baseball people. And you're one of them, Bryson, because you're a baseball guy.
These baseball people. Kyle.
Midweek college baseball are irrelevant. They're about as relevant as an FCS football game is. Teams throw by committees all the time. You just mentioned it. Florida lost to Stetson. Florida doesn't care about a midweek. They're getting their rotations set for the weekends. Now, having said all that, you are correct. This team is much better offensively. Rich Wallace brought this up in the fall. They don't want to depend on the home run. They're more balanced offensively. That's very good. I think those are positives. I am not going to make any judgments on the pitching staff until we get to the Big 12, because they haven't played an offense that really scares me to this point. So we'll see. It's a positive start, better than not. Most important, this is the most important thing. God bless Rich Wallace for bringing back the retro jersey look. God bless you. And getting rid of the blue. Beautiful. Love you, Rick. That alone should get you 5 wins on the schedule.
Let me be confident, Eric. Let me be confident, dang it.
I'll say this. The Orlando baseball jerseys look great. That's all I'm going to say about that.
Rich Wallace said that one of the Sanford games, they wore the jersey that looked like the 0-1 jersey from opening day against that fight. I love that.
Right, it was
I
the
do
jersey
love that
Rich played. Yeah,
it's great.
Yeah.
It's that's huge. I love the jerseys. I think they have the best jerseys, in fact, of all the UCF teams at this moment.
I will disagree, and we'll just leave.
More importantly, they got rid of the Kansas City Royals jerseys, Kyle, which is a big.
Don't you mean the Montreal Expos there, Eric?
That's true. It could have been the Expos, depending on.
Could have been the Philadelphia Phillies. I'm just saying the Powder Blues made a comeback. I'm just saying. All right, so baseball 6-0 to start. They have South Florida
Friday, Sunday on Plus.
Saturday 6, Sunday at 1. Yes, Plus on Friday and Sunday, but not Saturday.
Yeah, there's this thing called men's basketball that's airing at that time.
We're going to be a little busy at that time. That's going to be a pretty big game.
A lot of people, right? I know some fans don't hard to believe, but there's a lot of hardworking people behind the scenes that can't be at 3 places at once.
What a weekend! Yeah. What a weekend we have in store.
This is the Sports Equinox. Speaking of which, we did want to recap for you, and Bryson, I wanted to get you back in here. The indoor Big 12 track and field championships. Not the best showing for UCF, 21 points, 13th in the conference. What did we get? What performances did we get from UCF's individual athletes in particular? And how does this set the program up for the outdoor season, which will be starting fairly soon?
Well, I think that the big thing for this is that now you've gotten a chance to see all of the Big 12 competition at once. Like, you can see some of the Big 12 programs in other meets, but this is where you have all of them, and you all lay it out there together. And this team got to see what it takes to succeed in the Big 12 conference, and oh man, does it take a lot. I mean, the fact that the only the best of the best of UCF's track and field team ended up getting points at all for this one. Renaya Jones, of course, getting to the final in the 60-meter hurdles and the 60-meter dash. Renaya even got podium, silver medal, so she's still doing Renaya Jones things.
Yeah. And she qualified for the NCAAs too. I think she was the only qualifier. Is that right?
Yes, I was going to kind of do a best for last scenario, but yes, Renaya Jones has qualified for the NCAA Indoor Championship for the 3rd time in a row. She is now the 3rd athlete in UCF track and field history to do that, after Jackie Coward, who made it 4 times, and Ariel Scott, who did it 3 times. So that's some great company right there. So that's going to be later. March 8th is going to be the semifinal for that one. We'll keep an eye on that. But Renaya Jones is doing Renaya Jones things we kind of expect out of that. That said, she did run in the 200-meter dash and didn't make it in the final in that one, which I think goes to show you the level of competition in the Big 12, because Renaya would have just swept through that in the American. Here, not the case. Also in the 60-meter hurdles, BYU transfer Adeobi Tabugbo. She ended up taking bronze. She was right after Renaya right there. 60-meter hurdles was a really great event. Let me tell you, pretty much almost all of their points came in that event. And then Ashira Collins also picked up a few points. She's also a usual suspect. We know how good she is from the outdoor.
She finished 6th in the triple jump. Yeah.
Yes, and also 8th in the long jump to pick up a point there. So that's a few more. And then the 4x400 meter relay team also picked up a couple points, finishing in 7th. So I'll say this: Renaya Jones and Ashira Collins, I think, are Big 12 level athletes. I think that much is proven. But that said, UCF is not very much an indoor team, I think, to me. UCF has always definitely been an outdoor team. And so you take Renaya Jones, Adeobi Tabugbo, Ashira Collins, and you put them in an outdoor setting against the Big 12. I will be very interested to see how things will go there. The Big 12 level of competition is really high. You're not going to blitz the thing like they did in the American, where you just inundate it with your athletes and get a lot of points that way. You actually need to be really, really good. Like all of your athletes need to be really, really good in order to get points in the Big 12.
You got to be deep. That's what do we keep saying in every sport, guys?
There's a trend. Yeah,
man.
So, same in indoor, same in outdoor.
Yep. And then real quick, that'll get us to. I do want to give a shout out here to tennis. We haven't talked about them for a while, and that's on me. But women's.
I'm here at the USC National campus right now.
Yeah, that's right. And how about this men's tennis team? It's gotten off to an 8-1 start. Total opposite of what we've been used to, right, Eric? Because it seems like the men's team would always get off to this really rough start.
No doubt.
Have to like dig themselves out of a hole in the dual match season. Well, they're 8-1. They defeated UAB in their most recent match on February 25th. They play South Florida on Friday at the national campus at 6 p.m. Friday, March the 1st. Women's tennis, at least as of right now, well, they came up short earlier today against BYU 5.
Yeah, that's where Bryson and Nick were.
That's where Bryson and Nick were. They're the ones who.
That's where they are now.
A bit of a tough start, right? At 3-6.
Yeah, we talked to Brian Kanyeko after the game. You can find the once I'm done here, you'll see the interview after that on the Black and Gold Banneret YouTube channel. There you go. Thank you very much. You'll hear what Brian Kanyeko had to say about that. He mentioned how this team really needs to get meaner. I think is kind of the biggest thing. Now, Brian Kanyeko, I think, is having a similar issue that Cindy Balmalone kind of does, where he's scheduled really, really tough. And I think that's kind of coming back to bite him a little bit here, because this team is also kind of young on the young side. Only Jaleesa Leslie is the only senior on this team, if I remember correctly, and she didn't even play today. Olivia Linster, true freshman, she was in court 1. She actually played really well, by the way, despite losing. So I do like what I see from a talent perspective. The issue is that they just schedule really hard, and this is a hard conference to be, and this is just a very hard conference to be in, and they schedule very hard opponents. So
yeah, well, guess what? It's conference play starts now, doesn't it? Because it's Saturday, Texas Tech for alumni weekend at home, then at Baylor, at TCU for that Dallas trip. Or Waco and then Dallas, and then back home for Oklahoma on the 15th, which will be their second shot at Oklahoma. Remember, they started the season with them an ITA kickoff back in January. Doable for them to pull back in here? Like, what's the outlook right now as they're starting Big 12 play?
Well, the BYU is ranked number 45 in the nation. UCF ranks at about 59 right now. The ITA rankings, by the way, have now expanded beyond 25, so we can now kind of see where everyone stacks up.
Oh, that's nice of them.
That, yes. So it takes them a little bit to do it, but I think that what this shows here is UCF was right there with BYU the whole time. Like it was a really close match the entire time. So I would say that you see teams that are ranked around there, and those are the teams that UCF will be able to beat. So I'll just look and see where Oklahoma is on there. But if they're a lot higher than that, I definitely see my expectations on that one, because this is still a really good women's tennis conference. Don't get me wrong.
Yo, it was really good. Oklahoma right now 15th, number 1 in the country right now in the ITA team rankings. Oklahoma State 11-0.
My goodness.
Texas is 6th at and they're 7-3. Let's see what else we got there. Oklahoma 15, and even with just a 5-3 record. Let's see. I'm going through the rest of it. Texas Tech is 26th. Baylor 30th. So this is going to be
a whole different level there.
Oh yeah,
yeah, it's a little different and more the same.
I will say this: I think it's going to be hard for the men too, though, because when you look through the men, and Coach Bruce Burgess did a completely different approach where he scheduled a little softer. And the first really big opponent they played, Florida, they lost to. They did okay, but they lost to them. So it'll be very interesting to see what the men's side will do. But getting this confidence under this very young squad is a solid way to start off the Coach Bruce Burgess era. So I think tennis is about to kind of get that similar experience where every other UCF team is getting, where they're getting that Big 12 to face that Big 12 competition and getting just getting hit with how tough the conference is. Like, because you just have to experience how tough the conference is to play, and the tennis teams or women's tennis is now starting to do that. Men's tennis still has a little bit to go before they do conference play.
Yeah,
I'm just proud of
59. By the way, Bryson, go ahead, Eric.
I'm just proud of Bryson. He has matched the Black and Gold Banneret podcast record for doing a show on location from an athletic event in the late hours, matching our old buddy Brian Murphy. Remember Murph, Jeff, did the one show, I think it was a bandy show, did it from the parking lot at Tropicana Field after it was at a Yankee Rays game. We were both like, are you sure you're okay? He's like, yeah, sure, I'm fine. And hopefully, I think he got lost at one point. I don't know what. That was crazy. Well, Bryson's done that.
He got stuck in the elevator, didn't he?
No, I think that was last. Well, that's last. But we're not going to get into all that.
Fair
I'm
point.
just saying he did a show. He did a podcast literally from the parking lot at the Trop. So shout out to Murph, who's covering Major League Baseball spring training underway.
We love you, Murph.
But Bryson's been doing this whole show from the USTA Center, which the match ended like a couple hours ago. Kyle just came back from the Amway or Kia Center. Kia Center, whatever. It's gonna be. I'm gonna get you.
You got to put another $1 in the jar, Eric.
I know. Covering Taylor Hendricks and the Jazz Magic. We had media in Stillwater. We're all over the place.
That's one of the reasons why I jumped in from the USTA National Campus. Is I actually haven't gotten a chance to see Jake. I've only texted with him before, called him, so I wanted to actually be able to kind of see him on the show for the first time, which is kind of why I popped in. Nice to see him.
Absolutely packed show. So yeah, we got to put an end to this one. So hey, listen, thanks to everybody. We wanted to thank Jake Ferraro for all the work he's been doing. Make sure you follow him on all of his social media channels. Thanks again to Elo, Eric Lopez. Elo, another fantastic show. I'm okay. By the way, Eric, I'm still okay with 14. I really am. Kyle is not. VSOTG on social media.
I'm just hoping Kyle's enjoying his Long Island iced tea while you drink beer.
I mean, I had to do something.
I don't know how to feel about this. Kyle, do I need to make an emergency run here? Like,
wait, do we have HR now? I mean, if you're going to make an emergency run, just make sure I have some stout beer in the house so I don't have all this liquor. That's
okay, fair enough. All right. Yeah. Listen, friends don't let friends.
Clearly you're a rookie. When Murph did the show, he used to have some of those beverages you allege around him.
Bro.
Listen, Murph, there were some.
Wait, remember the COVID show where he was at the bar in Fort Worth? And called in, and may or may, the world had ended. Literally, it stopped, and Murph made sure to make the most out of his trip. And we'll just leave it.
I do know this. If the apocalypse comes upon us, I'm collecting all of us, and we're finding Murph because we know we're going to have the best time with him.
I think he's done a show from Beale Street. We got to do a top 10 rankings of shows Murph did locations from. It's pretty
I have partied with Murph in person at the Fiesta Bowl. I've lived that life, sir.
I mean, if you want to put night shifts into that rain delay thing from Tampa was a fun one.
Yeah. Thanks again to Bryson, who you can catch the nightcap on blackandgoldbanneret.com. And also thanks, like I mentioned, Jake, Kyle, the SOTG. You'll have some stuff on Tyler Hendricks, I'm sure, coming up as well. We got a big week.
Or Taylor as well. Taylor. He might have both, Taylor and Tyler. Who knows?
All right,
Tyler is Nick's wheelhouse.
Let me tell you something. Tyler, if he has a big game on Saturday, we got something to talk about. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You never know. The secret weapon may come up big here for us. Huge weekend of UCF sports with baseball, softball, and of course basketball coming up as we're heading down the home stretch for both basketball teams as the women start the Big 12 tournament next week and the men have games against ranked teams all over the place. So we will be with you on blackandgoldbanneret.com, your home for UCF sports on SB Nation. Follow us on X, Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and of course on our YouTube channel where you have all the latest clips from interviews, post-game, and otherwise on our YouTube channel as well. So for Bryson, for Kyle, for Eric, for Jake, I'm Jeff. Thank you so much for listening. This has been Night Shift. We will see you this weekend. Enjoy, folks. Go Knights. Charge on. See ya.